Welcome to CUNY Laureates, the show about CUNY graduates who went on to win major awards in their respective fields. On this episode, we profile 5 MacArthur Fellows who graduated from the City University of New York. First, Mitchell Feigenbaum manages to find order in chaos with the discovery of a mathematical constant that now bears his name. Then, Percy Diaconis has studied probability and math all his life, yet his journey to randomness started with magic tricks. And finally, Ocean Vuong, Annie Baker, and Irving Feldman are 3 very different writers. But together, their experimentation with language and convention pushes the art form into new frontiers. For many people outside of his inner circle, Mitchell Feigenbaum seemed somewhat peculiar, a kind of Beethoven of theoretical physics. In fact, in his early career, he was more invested in enjoying harmonies of Beethoven's symphonies and solving crossword puzzles than trying to formulate the mathematical basis of chaotic systems. That is until he started realizing there may be some order behind them. This is the story of a CUNY graduate who became a MacArthur Fellow and his pioneering research in chaos theory.
In Van Gogh's painting, there's a very complicated question amongst others that he asks. A garden of flowers. How many do you have to paint to actually give the dissimulation of reality? And the reality is not this precise, repetitive thing. There's always these slight errors. And all of these things are the things of chaotic motion, and they're the properties of complex and complicated objects.
Long before coming to these complex and complicated conclusions about reality, Mitchell had to face the harsh reality of his own situation. According to his father, an analytical chemist, and his mother, a public school teacher, the only reality Mitch needed to be concerned about was school. Fortunately for them, their prodigal son, although often rebellious and notoriously uninterested in formal side of education, started showing signs of intellectual prowess at a very early age. By his early teens, he managed to teach himself calculus and piano, and soon after, started scoring unusually high in math and science tests. His talents didn't go unnoticed, and in 1960, at the tender age of 16, he was given a chance to apply them at City College, studying for a degree in electrical engineering. It was here at City College that Mitchell started refining his already advanced mathematical skills, and was first introduced to the world of theoretical physics. After getting his Bachelor of Science degree from City College, he entered a PhD program at MIT. Yet, his original intention of continuing research in electrical engineering soon gave way to his rising passion for theoretical concepts. In a typical Mitchell fashion, instead of working towards his engineering degree, he started spending considerable amount of time researching concepts of classic mathematical physics. This eventually led him to change his major to physics. But even after successfully defending his PhD thesis and moving to Cornell for postdoctoral research, his publishing record remained curiously low. Known for his intellectual curiosity and lack of academic discipline, this Renaissance man preferred lavish interiors of New York restaurants to the sterile uniformity of a scientific lab. A loose-end, highbrow conversation accompanied by a glass of wine and cigarettes to an academic discussion about the latest scientific paper. Nevertheless, for many of his friends and colleagues, Mitchell Feigenbaum represented an ideal scientist, a person whose intellectual vigor wouldn't easily collapse under the weight of current paradigms, a passionate mind that could potentially break through the limitations set by scientific establishment and open doors to new ways of understanding the world. Little did they know that these doors would lead to chaos. In the early 1970s, after spending another 2 long and unproductive years as a researcher at Virginia Tech, Mitchell was offered a long-term position at Theoretical Division at Los Alamos. This invitation came from his longtime friend, Pete Carruthers. Carruthers would later state that he had a gut feeling that Mitchell would do something great, and that despite other people's advice against it, he had decided to give him a chance. The assignment was not an easy one. Mitchell was expected to crack the code and calculate the transition of stable systems into turbulence, or, to put it in more dramatic terms, compute the onset of chaos. For this purpose, he was given what was at the time considered a state-of-the-art programmable calculator, an HP 65, translated into modern times, a pocket calculator from the 1970s. Surprisingly enough, this imperfect device became instrumental in his remarkable discovery. Using his HP 65, Mitchell was able to develop methods capable of modeling the onset of chaos. He managed to confirm that the so-called period doubling transition to chaotic behavior happens in a series of geometrically focused steps, and demonstrated that these steps follow a universal pattern expressed in a number that came to be known as the Feigenbaum's constant, 4.6692. Mitchell's discovery of this constant had many theoretical implications. In the first place, the existence of such universal constant meant that chaos could possibly be quantified. The concept that apparent randomness of chaotic systems may be hiding underlying patterns and self-organizing principles led to the creation of a new field of mathematics now known as chaos theory.
I'm still not clear on chaos.
It simply deals with predictability in complex systems.
In 1979, Mitchell's discovery got its first confirmation in the physical world. Albert Liebschaber reported results on a physical experiment on the transition to turbulence in liquid helium. The transition showed period doublings, with exactly the same exponent that Mitchell had calculated back in Los Alamos.
Sitting in this behavior, this one precise behavior, at the transition to chaos, appearing, if you will, in embryonic seeds, is every possible behavior that these systems can exhibit.
In an instant, Mitchell became famous. In 1984, he was awarded a MacArthur Award, and a couple of years later, in 1986, the prestigious Wolf Prize in Physics. Until his death in June of 2019, Mitchell Feigenbaum continued to explore many avenues of his discovery. He found original ways to apply them in cartography, financial markets, and other unexpected fields, but also made his peace with academia, where he educated generations of students and encouraged them to find their own way of advancing the progress of science. But there was another, darker side to Mitchell's discovery.
The theory of it isn't exactly known, but I'll try to end this discussion with a bang.
The existence of universal patterns in transition to chaotic motion meant that even the systems that we traditionally consider stable might eventually slip into chaos. Unfortunately, one of those systems is our own, the solar system.
Luckily, even if Mitchell's predictions were right, we may have to wait a little longer before we witness the solar system's descent into chaos. In the meantime, all that we can do is sit back and enjoy the ride.
The Romans called it heads or ships. In 2024, the most famous version is the coin toss at the start of a Super Bowl.
Toss the coin. It is tails. Kansas City has won the toss.
But the result of tossing a coin in the air seems pretty simple, right? Heads or tails, 50-50 odds. Or is it? This is a story of a CUNY graduate who became a MacArthur Fellow and who has spent his life studying math and performing magic in order to explore questions of probability, like the simple coin toss.
So for many people, me in particular, viscerally, this is as close to a random phenomena as I know.
For Percy Diaconis, probability is like the laws of motion to Isaac Newton, or general relativity to Einstein. It is the core of his being. The coin toss is one of many problems he has studied over his career as a mathematician. For the coin toss problem, he and his collaborators did find a kind of solution to the question of heads or tails.
When you do the math, that small changes in initial conditions make for the difference between heads and tails. We showed that coins, the way real people flip them, it's about 0.51. It's not 0.51 to heads or tails, it's 0.51 that it comes up the way it started. That is, if you started heads up, it spends more time heads up. So it's better if you see it's heads, it's better to guess heads.
This answer, which took years to determine, is the type of mathematical analysis Percy Diaconis has engaged in over a 60-plus year career looking at randomness. But what brought him to math? Magic. One might say Percy's early life was a random sequence of events. Percy was born in New York City in 1945 and learned card tricks at an early age. He spent time as a youth at Tannen's Magic Store in Times Square, the home for magicians in New York, and learned card tricks there. This was later recounted in a book he co-authored called Magical Mathematics.
A 13-year-old boy slowly opens the door to the world's largest magic shop. It's 2 p.m, and the boy has cut school making the trip on New York's grimy subways. The shop is Louis Tannen's Magic Emporium at 42nd Street and 6th Avenue in New York's Times Square. Not the usual street-level shop with doggy-doo and plastic vomit in the window. Tannen's is on the 12th floor of the Wurlitzer building. You have to know about it to find your way in.
He met Di Vernon, a famous sleight of hand expert at the store, and decided at the age of 14 to leave home and join him on the road under the name Percy Warren.
One day he called me up and said, "I'm going to Delaware tomorrow. Do you want to go?" And I said, "Tomorrow?" And I was 14. And he said, "Yeah." I said, "I'd love to go."
Percy worked in small towns, in clubs and hotels and on ships, where he honed the craft of card sharking.
4 jacks.
Percy once said, "We found cricket gamblers to learn their techniques. There are often tricky probability questions involved. I didn't have much probabilistic intuition and made every boneheaded mistake you could make. During 10 years on the road, I learned the hard way." But Percy still had a yearning for education, so he enrolled in evening classes at City College, paid for by poker games. At City College, he earned his bachelor's degree in math, under the tutelage of Hironari Onishi, among others. He was referred to Harvard by famed mathematician Martin Gardner, who said of Percy, "This young student is one of the best card mechanics in the country." Percy was accepted into Harvard and earned his PhD. Soon afterwards, he was hired at the Stanford University, where he has been ever since.
A question is, how many times do you have to shuffle a deck of cards to mix it up? I mean by shuffling, probably what you mean by shuffling. You cut them about in half, you go like that, and you push them together, right? And how many times do you have to do that till the cards get all mixed up? Let's do it for a second. Suppose I cut them exactly in half. 26, 26. Well, then half the time I drop the first card from my left hand. Now this only has 25 cards left, so the chance I drop the next card from my left hand...
One of Percy's major contributions to both math and magic was determining how to shuffle a card deck. The number of arrangements that a deck of cards be shuffled into are indeed astronomical. The math goes like this: 52 values for the first card, times 51 values for the second card, times 50 for the third, and on down to 1. Math says there are as many possible arrangements in a deck of cards as there are atoms on Earth, but Percy's study of the randomness of card shuffling was so influential, it led to changes in how casinos shuffle cards.
So the answer is about 7.
Some of his other breakthroughs include the law of truly large numbers, which states that eventually any highly implausible result will happen, like winning the lottery, and advances on the Markov chain. The Markov chain is a mathematical principle that states any repeated action is only dependent on the current state of the thing, not its history. Markov chains are used in the stock market and in Google search algorithms. For example, when you type in the search box and it autofills for you, this is a Markov chain. The algorithm is using the current state of the words to predict the next ones.
I've spent years analyzing the basic images of randomness that we have. Coin tossing, shuffling cards, flipping tacks, rolling roulette balls.
Percy won the MacArthur Award in 1982 for his work on randomness. He's been awarded numerous awards and honorary degrees since.
What I began this talk by saying was I was going to try to tell you that you could find math any place, and I did really find it in two of the most humdrum day-to-day things, shuffling cards and adding numbers. You really can find math any place. Of course, the real reason for who cares is sometimes the math is beautiful. I hope I convinced you of that. Thank you.
Between popular entertainment, journalism, and social media, the amount of writing being created in the world seems to increase exponentially by the day. One might think there's not much left to be said. That is until you encounter an artist who can make words sound entirely new. This is the story of 3 CUNY graduates who became MacArthur Fellows and the works of art that they craft out of language.
Milk flower petals in the street, like pieces of a girl's dress. May your days be merry and bright.
In 1975, the U.S. military played Irving Berlin's song White Christmas over the radio in South Vietnam as a coded order to begin the evacuation of Saigon. It was a bizarre, heartbreaking juxtaposition that Ocean Vuong learned of from his Vietnamese grandmother, who remembered the event, and one he captures in his poem, Obod with Burning City.
A military truck speeds through the intersection, children streaking inside, a bicycle hurled through a store window. When the dust rises, a black dog lies panting in the road, its hind legs crushed into the shine of a white Christmas.
Growing up poor and queer in America, and raised by 3 immigrant women unable to read in any language, Ocean Vuong found himself faced with a culture that was hostile to nearly every aspect of his identity. It would be in reading and in writing where Ocean would find a refuge and an outlet. Ocean eventually settled at Brooklyn College in New York. Describing his arrival in the school's English department, Ocean said, "I found my people. I was seen for the first time."
Autumn. Somewhere over Michigan, a colony of monarch butterflies, numbering more than 15,000, are beginning their yearly migration south. In the span of 2 months, from September to November, they will move 1 wing beat at a time, from southern Canada and the United States to portions of central Mexico, where they will spend the winter. It only takes a single night of frost to kill off a generation. To live, then, is a matter of time, of timing.
In 2019, Ocean published his debut novel, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, a loose autobiography written in the form of a letter from a son to his mother, who cannot read. It's a portrait of a life entangled in a fraught world of colonialism, identity, and love.
That time when I was 5 or 6 and, playing a prank, leapt out at you from behind the hallway door, shouting, "Boom!" You screamed, face raked and twisted, then burst into sobs, clutched your chest as you leaned against the door, gasping. I stood bewildered, my toy army helmet tilted on my head. I was an American boy parroting what I saw on TV. I didn't know that the war was still inside you, that there was a war to begin with, that once it enters you, it never leaves, but merely echoes, a sound forming the face of your own son. Boom.
In 2019, Ocean Vuong won the MacArthur Fellowship for his unique experimentation with language and themes, and for the work yet to come from this promising young artist.
One.
Two.
Three. Start again.
1.
2.
3.
4. 5.
6.
7.
Shoot.
Start again.
5. 6.
7. Circle Mirror Transformation, the 2009 off-Broadway play by Annie Baker, is set in a small-town drama class where a series of theater exercises slowly give way to interpersonal conflicts and revelations among the characters. It's a play that's characteristic of Annie's interest in depicting things rarely seen on stage: settings, gestures, speech patterns. Even silence itself is granted particular importance in her work. As a teenager growing up in Massachusetts, Annie Baker developed an interest in how people really spoke and would secretly record and transcribe conversations to gain insight. It was at Brooklyn College where she sought to build a playwriting career out of these everyday observations. Annie studied a broad range of disciplines, from philosophy and psychotherapy to narrative theory. But from these lofty academic materials, Annie constructed unique visions of the lives of ordinary people, from drama students and small-town professors to high school burnouts and movie theater cleaners.
Hey.
Hi, Avery.
Sorry,
You're late.
Yeah. I was just about to... Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
My dad was supposed to give me a ride, but then he couldn't, and I had to take like 3 different buses to get here, and I'm still trying to figure out the whole...
Yeah, I don't really need an explanation.
No, of course. I just feel bad, and I can totally reassure you that it won't happen again.
It just puts me in an awkward position because
The thing is, I'm actually like this obsessively punctual person, and I'm like never ever late. And this was just like a crazy anomaly with the buses, and now I know, and I can promise you it will never happen again.
Fine.
In 2017, Annie Baker received the MacArthur Fellowship. At once both naturalistic and uncanny, Annie's plays continue to explore the nuances of communication and the silences in between, aiming to reach into the mundane and grasp the profound.
Seven. 8. 9. 10.
loosed from the shaping hand, who lay at the window, face to the open sky, the fever of birth now cooling, cooling. "I," said the gingerbread man, leaping upright, laughing. The first faint dawn of breath roared in his lungs and toes. Down he jumped running.
Irving Feldman, the poet and professor of English with a career spanning over 6 decades, found frequent inspiration in the subjects of classical myths and fairy tales. In As Fast as You Can, from Irving's 1972 collection Lost Originals, the gingerbread man's brief but fiercely lived existence speaks to a yearning in the reader.
Shimmering and redolent, his spirit tempts our subtlest appetite. There he runs, freely on the wind. We sniff a sharp intelligence, lunge and snap our teeth at the breathable body of air, and murmur while it is flying by, "Life is unhappy, life is sweet."
Prometheus, Circe, King Shahryar, and others were all subjects for Irving's wandering pen. But it wasn't just an imagined past that demanded the poet's attention. Born in Coney Island in 1928 to a family of Russian Jewish immigrants, Irving was able to pursue his higher education at the tuition-free City College before embarking on his writing and teaching career. But despite the relative security of his Brooklyn upbringing, Irving had watched from afar as the Holocaust claimed millions of Jewish lives. It was a psychological shock that he grappled with in much of his work.
My family tree is mist and darkness. Century after century, one lay upon the other begetting me. Then my millennium in marshes and wandering obscurity revealed my heritage. Monster, I lack immortality. My race is superfluous on earth. The last, the final generation, after me no other or someone else, I laid down on top of death.
Yet alongside these elegiac ruminations on loss, Irving's poems attempt to reclaim what he called the metaphysical justification, that is, the essential right of every person to life and dignity, both for the Jewish people and for all ordinary unsung lives everywhere. In 1992, Irving Feldman was awarded the MacArthur Fellowship following 30 years of writing poetry. But creation hasn't always come easy. His poem, Heavenly Muse, imagines an argument between Irving and a rain-soaked muse who has arrived at his home late, as usual.
I ought to go and find myself a nice, steady fiction writer. As blessed be her memory, poor mother always told me. But I had to follow my heart. And now look at me, stuck with you, who want the roll, the rise, the carol, the dictation, without your submission. This is eavesdropping, this is stealing, until you give yourself to me. Oh, all right, sing, Heavenly Muse.
Three writers with three different perspectives and sensibilities. But each of them has thrived on experimentation, seeking out the ways that something new and exciting can still be mined from one of humanity's oldest art forms. If their work is any indication, it's a mine that runs deep, with many more gems yet to be discovered.